Oklahoma, without a doubt, is easily the most hated program in college football because no matter what this team does to try to be able to assemble the best team possible, all you hear is why this season is going to be another disappointment. No matter if Brent Venables went out there and fixed the two biggest issues that was responsible for one of the worst seasons that the Sooners have had in 26 years, it still isn't good enough in the eyes of non-Oklahoma fans. Brent Venables goes out and he hires Ben Arbuckle to be his new offensive coordinator, and he's able to get Ben Arbuckle's quarterback and John Matir to follow him down to Norman, which John Matir by himself accounted for more touchdowns and more yardage than what Oklahoma had as a team last year. But yet, John Matir is being doubted and disrespected all because he comes from an inferior conference and didn't really look that good against good competition, even though he was playing on Washington State, a program that only produced one NFL draft pick on offense from last season. But you see, context always never is brought up when it comes to Oklahoma, because all folks who talk about Oklahoma want to do is just find ways to pick holes and find a way to tear down this program instead of trying to find ways to analyze this team from a fair standpoint. John Matir was the number one rated quarterback in the transfer portal. The last couple of quarterbacks that have been rated number one in the transfer portal have all turned out to have really good stints with their new programs. Cam Ward, for example, was the number one rated quarterback in last year's transfer portal cycle, and he was a Heisman finalist. But since John Matir plays for Oklahoma, it's all he's going to get exposed playing against better competition. You know, it's funny to me how John Matir is getting knocked for the level of competition that he went up against, right? But nobody's betting an eye about Joey Aguilar at Tennessee. Everybody thinks that Joey Aguilar could be just as good, if not better, than what Nico Maviava was, even though Tennessee is what most of us would call to be a rebuilding year with everything that they have to replace from last season. But nobody's trashing Joey Aguilar. But since John Matir decided that he wanted to play for Oklahoma, he's overrated. He's not going to look good against SEC competition. If you take a quarterback that scored 44 touchdowns, the most in college football last year, he was the only quarterback in the nation with 20 passing touchdowns and 10 rushing touchdowns on a squad that lacked a lot of talent, and you put him on an Oklahoma team that has a bunch of blue chip receivers, guys that they either acquired in the transfer portal that were held in high regard or were 4 stars or better coming out of high school. I don't think that is stupid to think that John Matir's production is going to do nothing but increase with him having better talent to throw to, especially with him following his offensive coordinator to the same spot that he's in right now. It would be another thing if John Matir was coming to Oklahoma having to learn an entirely new system, but that's not the case. If anything, John Matir should be in the perfect situation to not just build off what he did at Washington State, but to also be able to have the similar impact for Oklahoma that we saw Cam Ward have on Miami last year. Miami had a lot of issues last season, and Cam Ward was able to mask them with how good he was able to play. We can see John Matir do the same thing with the wide receivers that he's throwing to, receiving better coaching than what he got at Washington State. You see, there's really weird arguments against why John Matir is not going to succeed at Oklahoma that it just sounds like goalpost moving to me. It just seems like people hate to hear the idea of Oklahoma having a really good season, so they want to play these stupid, dumbass mental gymnastics to try to find any way to convince themselves that Oklahoma is going to be relevant in the SEC when this program is never going to be irrelevant. They have too much money and too much resources for that to happen. People are just finding any way possible to prey on the downfall of the Oklahoma Sooners, and they want to do it in the most dumbest way possible, trying to find a way to call a quarterback who is the number one rated QB out of this past portal cycle overrated. It makes no sense to me. I don't know if it's Texas fans. I don't know if it's just jealous SEC fans because they wanted John Matir and they were unable to get him. But Miami offered more money for John Matir to come to South Florida than what Oklahoma did. If he would have went to Miami, nobody would have been saying these things about him not going up against great competition, perceiving him to be overrated. But because he chose to play for Oklahoma, though, he is the one who gets all of this flack. I don't even think that Carson Beck is getting talked down upon as much as what John Matir was. And if I had to choose between John Matir and Carson Beck, I'm picking John Matir. John Matir has a lot of similarities in his playing style to what Bo Nix does. He's an efficient passer, and he's incredibly athletic. And even if John Matir isn't as good with Oklahoma as what we saw him with Washington State last year, I promise you, it can't get no worse than what Oklahoma had at quarterback. When Oklahoma played Tennessee last season, I literally thought that Jackson Arnold was colluding with Vegas to lose that game for Oklahoma. With the amount of turnovers that he had, you would have thought that he was Santa's secret helper and he just wanted Tennessee to win that game. He felt bad for Josh Heupel and he wanted Josh Heupel to get his revenge on Oklahoma, and you can't convince me otherwise because the way he was turning that football over like it was Christmas in September, we all probably would have thought the same thing if we didn't know no better. You can't get no worse than what Oklahoma was at quarterback last year. So even if John Matir isn't that good, he won't be the worst quarterback in the SEC this year. And we can put money on that. You can't get no worse than Jackson Arnold and Michael Hawkins. No offense to those brothers, but they were not good. Literally, the only way Oklahoma was able to win games was acting like they were Iowa. And you can't win games in the SEC playing like you're Iowa. They're the only program that I can think of that's been able to win despite not having good quarterback play. You're going to get way better quarterback play from John Matir than what you got out of your two starters at this position last year, which is why I don't understand the amount of jealousy and hate that non-Sooner fans have towards John Matir. Now, the media is really high on John Matir, but the non-media guys seem to be the only ones that think that this kid is overrated, he's not going to pan out, and it's only because he plays for Oklahoma. If he would have went to any other program, if he would have went to Ohio State, Alabama, everybody and their grandma would have been hyping this dude up. But since he plays for the most hated program in college football, he's the one that's getting all of this doubt because of where he played. Do you not know how many great quarterbacks came from lower level schools? I mean, like, where you come from has little to do with how good you're going to be. What matters is that you have the skill set, you have the intangibles to take advantage of having a better situation to thrive in than what you did at your previous stop. In Washington State, over the last couple of years, has been a gold mine for quarterbacks. Cam Ward balled out of Miami. They had another quarterback behind Cam Ward that was balling out at San Jose State, and then they got John Matir. So if you get a quarterback from Washington State, you're in pretty good shape. They normally produce some really prolific quarterbacks. I just can't fathom John Matir completely fizzling out and being worse than what Jackson Arnold and Michael Hawkins were in 2024. The mental gymnastics has to stop. The SEC is just jealous of what John Matir is about to do at Oklahoma this year. I expect this guy to put up Heisman numbers, to be at least a top 3 quarterback in this conference, and to have Oklahoma winning 9 games this year. It's not unrealistic to think that. And all of the numbers support this argument that John Matir is going to be way better. He's going to provide a bigger spark to this offense with what he's able to do, not just throwing the ball, but on the ground as well.